something in us knows that we're connected to the vastness of the world, says Jack Kornfield in episode 268, the holiday special for 2024, Rediscovering Your Secret Beauty and Sharing Your Special Gift. I really enjoy this episode. It is actually one of my favorite Dharma talks ever given by Jack. We released this as an audio podcast some time ago, but I recently, when spelunking the archives, found the video counterpart. It's Jack in holiday attire in the Spirit Rock, I think the old hall, if I'm correct, because this was recorded in 2015 on December 14th. And the message in it is so prescient, not just for the season. There are amazing Christmas-focused stories in this podcast. One of my favorite ones involving Western monks putting up a Christmas tree in Ajahn Chah's Thai forest monastery. And then a wonderful Hawaiian story on how to bring our special, unique gifts to the world. And then some Ram Dass meets Mother Teresa service wisdom about how sometimes the best way to serve another is to allow them to serve you. Something that is very difficult and something that Ram Dass was able to exemplify so well in his final years on Maui after the stroke. And in this podcast, Jack says that our job is to be fully present for life with its 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And it's not to get something. You have enough. If anything, it's time to give some of that stuff away. And this really touched my heart. I have moved so much lately. And right now I have the majority of my things in a storage bin on the other side of the country. And they were all things that I accumulated recently. I had previously moved and gotten rid of basically everything. I was down to a suitcase. And within 2 years, I accumulated a whole storage bin worth of things, and now it's somewhere, and I'm somewhere else. And am I missing the things? Maybe a little. The beanbag chair, my puja table, my Ganesh Murti, yes. But for the most part, it probably would have been easier and a lot less heavy and expensive to just let that stuff go. And that's what Jack shares here at a time of commercialization and accumulation and objects and things. And what these stories, these beautiful holiday stories, point to is that as this winter solstice opens us to the new year and opens us internally to a potential new you, that if we take the time, the spaciousness to uncover that secret beauty within ourselves, we'll be able to uncover our special gift and share that with the world in our most authentic and shining way. Because what we actually want, yes, things are nice. They can bring happiness for some time. What we actually want, Jack says, what you most deeply long for is who you are, is coming back to your own heart, your own beauty, your own well-being that you were born with, that secret beauty. And I invite you into that with this wonderful video episode, this holiday special, Heart Wisdom 268, Rediscovering Your Secret Beauty and Sharing Your Special Gift. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you help others through the authenticity of your being, and may your heart be smiling. Namaste.
So it's a beautiful autumn, almost winter night out there. Wasn't it great to have a rainstorm finally? And the land and the deer and the animals and the plants are just so happy as we are to have this moisture that we've needed for so long. And it's also this turning of the seasons. In a week we'll be at the winter solstice. So it's the holiday time. It's Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, and actually in Islam it's also the holiday that celebrates the birth of the prophet at this time. Everybody in different parts of the world, this is northern hemisphere, you get it in the southern hemisphere the other time of the year, but there is something archetypal and deep in us as human beings to notice that it gets darker and darker and darker. And then there's a day when it turns and the light starts to come back again, if we're good, right? And fortunate. And my teacher, Ajahn Chah, after some years after I was there started to be, and a couple of other friends who started with him in the 1960s, there started to be a group of other Westerners who came to study with him because he was a very wise and kind of remarkable teacher. And so he decided, after about 5 years, to open a monastery that was for Westerners alone, where the language was in English, because a lot of people came who weren't able to understand the Lao and Thai local languages. So they found a village nearby that was interested, and they built this beautiful kind of bamboo monastery in the forest for these people, little huts and a place to meet. And then after a couple of years, just around this time of year, in the main hall of that new little forest monastery, some of the monks put up a Christmas tree. This disturbed the villagers, who went to complain to Ajahn Chah after a bit, and they said, here we cut the bamboo and built these buildings, and we feed them, we give them food in their alms bowl every morning, we care for them, and we thought they were becoming Buddhists, and now they put a Christmas tree in the meditation hall, and what's going on here? So Ajahn Chah said, we should do something about this. So he called the monks over and the villagers and had a kind of meeting the way one might. And he listened to the villagers again. They recited their concerns. And then he asked the monks and nuns from the West who were there, he said, I want to understand what this holiday means. And they talked about it a little bit, and he listened, and he said, oh, it's a holiday of generosity where people are giving to one another. It's a holiday of care and compassion. It's a holiday of renewal. It's a holiday of moving from selfishness to selflessness. He listened. He said, all right, he said to the villagers, you're right. They shouldn't be celebrating Christmas. How about if we call it Chris Buddhamas? And they have been celebrating it ever since there in that particular monastery. It is, it's a wonderful thing to be able to come and sit and meditate as we have in this dark evening with the stars that are here and the air so clear after the rain. And part of the ability to come and sit and meditate is not just to have some particular meditative experience, but to let us quiet the mind, open the heart, and sense the vast silence, the turning of the seasons and the turning of the world that we're woven into, that we're a part of, and that sometimes we forget, only on occasion, when we're busy doing our errands and checking the list and getting our shopping done and all those. It somehow gives us a space to remember something bigger that is both mysterious and wonderful. And it's that which reconnects us both with the mystery of the world and with one another. And I have a real appreciation for you who've come tonight and over these 30 plus years of this class at Spirit Rock, for the sincerity of people who come. And I hear over and over again how the teachings of the Dharma, the teachings of mindfulness, the teachings of compassion and loving kindness, of forgiveness, of inner transformation, change people's lives. People come up to me or they write letters, and a woman wrote and said she was moving her parents from their home where they'd lived for 60 some years. Her parents were now 91 and 92, and they needed to be moved into assisted living, and it was really hard for the parents and hard for her. And not only that, you know how these things go. She was in conflict with her siblings, some who wanted the move, some who didn't. The stuff, what do we do with that? Well, you know how all that that's why they call it nuclear family, by the way, but that's just a little... But anyway, she said, I went out after a day of struggling with them and all the stuff and my siblings, and I just sat on a hillside quiet, and I did my meditation practice. And I could feel the inner agitation from others and the fear of my parents of something new and all of that. And I just stayed with it with mindfulness and compassion for everybody. Everybody was struggling. Everybody was afraid something new was about to happen. She said, and as I got quieter and more peaceful, I realized I could go back into that situation and I could be the one that carried that place of understanding and peace that everybody really needed. And she said, thank you, to the Dharma. Thank you for these practices and teachings. Or I get notes from people who are in the middle of a health crisis, or their partner or someone in their family is. And they say, nothing has helped me more than knowing how to steady myself. Otherwise, I would be lost in, the fears of what about this cancer, or what about this progressing, and I would lose my life because I'm not here. And I realized that the only place that actually can be alive is here and now. And these are the practices that let me do this. When I traveled in Burma last year together with my partner Trudy and with this foundation, the Foundation for People of Burma that I'm a part of, we met with Aung San Suu Kyi, the Nobel Prize winner, who's now become elected, or her party has in Burma, as the new government. And she had been under house arrest and in prison over the course of 17 years. And she said, if I didn't have meditation practice, I don't know what I would have done. But because I had it, she said, they never really had me in prison because I wouldn't hate them. And because I wouldn't hate them, I didn't feel like I was under their power at all. And she came out with such graciousness and clarity and generosity of spirit after all. Imagine 17 years where she wasn't allowed to be with her children when they graduated college. She wasn't allowed to be with her husband when he died. And still she kept that steadiness. And she said, it was this training in mindfulness and compassion and loving kindness that got me through it all. So I both appreciate the sincerity of everyone who we join in practicing together and the fruits of it in our lives. And of course, the mystery of this practice, and really of a spiritual path, is that it's not so much focused on self-improvement, although you can learn to find an inner equanimity or balance. You can deepen a sense of steadiness and resilience and so forth. But it's not really about perfecting yourself. You've already tried that, as we talk about in previous weeks. Therapy, going to the gym, doing a diet, all that stuff. And it only half worked, as you can see. It's not about perfecting yourself. It's much more about perfecting your love, and perfecting a love for this human life that you have been given, this remarkable life, and how you enter it and how you move through it. And I was given recently, I thought I had it with me, but I can't find it, a book of some of the sayings or teachings from Mother Teresa. And in one part of it, she talks about how the most important thing that she and the sisters of the missionaries of charity can do to give to a person is to respect their dignity. She said, whether you're a homeless person on the street who's dying and we help, or whether you're an orphan, or whether you're somebody who's come from, a very wealthy country and wants to serve and help, she said, it doesn't matter who this being is who comes. We're all hungry for respect, and we're all hungry to be treated with a kind of respect and dignity that is the birthright of every being who is born here. And so, again, meditation isn't so much to make something happen, although you can learn beautiful techniques and practices to develop loving kindness or compassion, or to steady your attention and be balanced with mindfulness. But not in order to become a mindful person. More than that, to treat yourself and all that you touch with the spirit of respect and dignity and care. To see the sacredness of life. Thomas Merton, the Christian mystic, calls it seeing the secret beauty of every being you meet behind these eyes. Is a secret beauty that was born into every single being. And we'll talk more about it this evening. And he says, if only we could see each other that way, there'd be no more need for war or cruelty or greed. The big problem would be that we would fall down and worship each other. But we see the beauty in one another, and when we start to pay attention with mindfulness, we also can see the illusion of separateness, what's called the small sense of self or the body of fear, what interferes with us seeing each other with the eyes of love and the eyes of understanding. In Alice Walker's writings, she has a moment where she writes, one day I was sitting there like a motherless child, which I was, and it came to me, that feeling of being a part of everything, and I knew if I cut a tree, my arm would bleed. And I laughed, and I cried, and I run all around the house. In fact, when it happens, you can't miss it. And there's some way which we all know this. We've had moments walking in the high mountains, or listening to an amazing piece of music, or making love, or being there at the birth of a child, or the mysterious moment of death, where the spirit leaves this body, or some other extraordinary times, or maybe ordinary times, crossing the Golden Gate Bridge and watching the sweep of fog come in and realizing we're in the city of St. Francis, the beloved city of St. Francis. So something in us knows that we're connected to the vastness of the world. And to meditate, more than anything, is an invitation to remember, to quiet ourselves, to touch back into this truth or this reality, beyond the busyness or the fears or the confusion that we also have, because we're humans. We have the tainted glory of humanity. Now there's a kind of there's a very simple expression that Zen Master Suzuki wrote, she used to describe the paradox of spiritual practice, in which he said to his students, "You're perfect just the way you are." And everyone went, how nice, so much love and dignity and appreciation. But then the rest of the phrase goes, "You're perfect just the way you are, and there's still room for improvement," And both of those are true. Meditation and spiritual practice isn't meant to be a grim duty. It's meant to be a rediscovery of the love and the beauty, the secret beauty that's in you. One of my favorite holiday stories. This story took place, and it's part of the National Story Project, in the 1930s in Seattle, and told by this fellow's grandfather, who was the oldest of 6 brothers and a sister. The family finances were terrible during the Depression. My father's business had collapsed, jobs were non-existent. The country was suffering. We had a tree for Christmas, but this year, no presents. We simply couldn't afford them. And on Christmas Eve, we all went to bed in pretty low spirits. Unbelievably, when we woke up on Christmas morning, there was a mound of presents under the tree. We tried to control ourselves at breakfast, but we rushed through the meal in record time. And then the fun began. My mother went first. We surrounded her in anticipation, and she opened the package and saw she'd been given an old shawl that she'd misplaced several months earlier, now stitched together properly. My father got an old axe with a repaired handle. My sister got her old slippers. One of the boys got a newly washed pair of patched trousers. I got a hat, the same hat I thought I'd left in a restaurant back in November. Each old cast-off came as a total surprise. Before long, we were laughing so hard we could barely pull the strings on the next package. But from where had this largesse come? It was my brother Morris. For several months, he'd been secreting away old things or broken things he knew we wouldn't miss too much. And then on Christmas Eve, after everyone else had gone to bed, he'd quietly wrapped the presents and placed them under the tree. I remember this as the finest Christmas we ever had. So there's something in spiritual life that's not about gaining or changing ourselves. It's called fruition practice or resultant practice. It's owning with gratitude the fact that we are here and that we're beautiful and that others are and that we get to live this human incarnation. And your job then is to be fully present for your life with its 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. It's not to get something where you have enough. I mean, if anything, it's time to give some of that stuff away. You know that's true. But it's to understand that actually what you most deeply long for is who you are, is coming back to your own heart, to your own beauty, your own well-being that you were born with, to that secret beauty. Now, that being said, you're perfect just the way you are. There's that other little phrase, and there's still room for improvement. And so the other part of the practice that we do together or that we share in different ways, mindfulness, compassion, loving kindness, forgiveness, and so forth, is watering the seeds of goodness that are there in each of us. And of course, in all the many studies in the last couple of decades of modern neuroscience, it's begun to wildly study mindfulness and compassion and all these kinds of things. The main discovery in neuroplasticity of these last decades is that inner strengths and inner capacities can be developed. They can grow, they can be trained. And so we can train in presence. We can train ourselves in steadiness. We can train ourselves to respond with clarity. We can train ourselves in a kind of balance or equanimity that allows the joys and sorrows of life and meets them with a dignity for ourselves and that we offer to others. And as we begin to develop or tune into or cultivate or remember the capacities of mindfulness and presence, there grows out of it what are called the dimensions of your own Buddha nature. They start to flower. Your generosity grows deeper because it's easy for you to give things away and care for others when you feel whole in yourself. Your patience grows because there's only now anyway. I mean, where are we going? Your clarity grows. Your integrity gets deeper because, as I've said in other evenings, it's really hard to sit and meditate after a day of killing and stealing. It doesn't work very well, and you start to realize, hey, this is not actually the path that I want to be on, you know? Your dedication works more fully because you find something that really brings meaning into your life, your compassion. And the sense of trust grows. Not trust that you're not going to grow old and die and that bad things won't happen. You will grow old and you will die, as will the people around you. That's part of the turning of the seasons as much as this moment before winter solstice. But then how will you live, given this limited, mysterious human incarnation? I mean, that's part of what makes it so mysterious. is that it's not forever. It's pretty wild, isn't it? And then what does that understanding, that wisdom really do to inform us? There grows with wisdom a sense of trust that you're part of something bigger. As the Ojibwe, famous Ojibwe saying goes, sometimes I go about pitying myself when all the while I'm being carried by great winds across the sky. Or the poet Pablo Neruda, who writes, you can pick all the flowers, but you can't stop the spring. There is in you a life spirit that was born and that exists in this incarnation, in this life, but it's not limited to your body. It's a spirit that's beyond that, that was free for Aung San Suu Kyi, even though they can put your body in prison, but no one can imprison your spirit. No one can take this from you. And so you begin to tune in as you quiet the mind and open the heart to something that's beyond the small sense of self and the body of fear. And you start maybe by just bringing the mind and body together instead of having the mind be in the past and the future and worries and plans and remembering and so forth. And it makes space to see your life, to see the small sense of self and the fears that we all have and the ideas and confusion. And also to recognize that there's a space of awareness, of loving awareness, that can acknowledge and bow to what's present, say, oh yeah, this is fear, and this is confusion, and this is longing, and this is love, and this is joy, and this is conflict. And say, this is part of the ride of being a human being. And somehow you are bigger than all of that. You are the loving awareness itself. And you enter the stream of wisdom, of that kind of inner freedom. Or to use another language of the Buddhist Four Noble Truths, you want to look at the ills of the world or of your own life, and you can see that suffering is the result of greed and hatred and ignorance. And if we look around, the warfare and the racism and the conflicts and the environmental destruction are the result of greed and of hatred and of ignorance. But those are not the only human possibility. When we recognize that those are the cause of suffering, it also becomes possible for us to turn the heart and mind to these other human dimensions. Instead of hatred, we can learn to manifest and bring into the world love. Instead of ignorance and delusion, we can bring clarity and understanding between humans, between species, between all of life. Instead of greed, we can bring into the world generosity and gratitude for life. And you know this in your own life. You can live that. You can develop it and turn toward it. And if we look, all of the ecological problems and all of the modern dilemmas caused by humanity have their roots in the human heart. And therefore, the good news is that they also can be transformed. And it's our time to do it as a species. It's time for you individually, of course, but as I've talked about many, many times, no amount of outer development of nanotechnology and computers and internet and biotechnology and space technology and all this amazing stuff is going to stop continuing warfare or environmental destruction or racism or tribalism. The outer developments of humanity that we benefit from and celebrate rightfully now need to be matched by the inner developments of humanity. That's our curriculum as humans. And it's in your good hands and in your hearts. And the beautiful thing, the kind of sincerity that I see in people, certainly who come here, is that we know this. We already know this. We recognize this in our heart. And so it's a gift for us in our own lives, and it's a gift that we bring back to the world. In Zen, they say that there are only two things. You sit and sweep the garden, and it doesn't matter how big the garden is. So you take the time to quiet the mind, open the heart, remember your interconnection with life, remember what really matters to you. In the end, what matters? Did I love well? Did I give my gifts to the world? And then you get up from your sitting and you pick up the broom, and you sweep. And as Martin Luther King said, if a man sweeps streets for a living, or a woman, they should sweep as Michelangelo painted, as Beethoven composed music, as Shakespeare wrote his plays, with that kind of care and dignity, to take that to whatever it is that you do and tend this beautiful world and serve it. To tend the hungry, feed the hungry, to tend those who are cold, those who are in need. As Ram Dass's teacher, Neem Karoli Baba, said when Ram Dass said, "How do I get enlightened?" And Neem Karoli Baba looked back and he said, "Love people and feed them." Ram Dass said, "Yeah, what about enlightenment?" And he said, "Love people and feed them." So you sit and you sweep the garden. This is Puanani, a Hawaiian teacher. She writes, "One of the processes I use to help people talk to each other and build community is an exercise where people tell three stories. The first is the story of all your names. The second is the story of your community. And the third story I ask is to tell the story of your gift." One time I did this with a group in our local high school. We went around the circle and got to this young man, Kele. He told the story of his names well and the stories of his community. But when it came time to tell the story of his gift, he asked, "What, miss? What kind of gift you think I get, eh? I stay in this special ed class and I get a hard time reading and I cannot do the math. And why you make me ashamed for?" Ask me that kind of question. What kind of gift you have? If I had gift, you think I'd be in this class? Kaylee just shut down and shut up. And I felt shamed. All the time I've ever done that, I've never meant to shame anyone. 2 weeks later, I'm in the local grocery store and I see him down one of those aisles and I see his back and I'm going down there with my cart and I think, nope, I'm not going there. And I turn around as fast as I can. And then he turns around and he sees me and he throws his arms open and he says, "Auntie, I've been thinking about you, 2 weeks I've been thinking, what my gift? And I say, "Okay, brother, what your gift?" And he says, "I've been thinking I cannot do that math stuff and I cannot read so good. But Auntie, when I go in the ocean, I can call the fish, and the fishy comes every time. And every time I can put food on my family's table, every time. And sometimes when I stay in the ocean and the shark, he come, and he look at me and I look at him, and I tell him, "Uncle, I'm not going to take plenty fish. I'm just going to take 1-2 fish just for my family. All the rest I leave for you." And so the shark, he say, "Okay, you cool, brother." And I tell the shark, "Uncle, you cool." And the shark, he go his way and I go mine. And I look at this boy, Kele, and I know what a genius he is. But in our society, the way the schools are run, he's rubbish. He's destroyed, not appreciated. So when I talk to his teacher and the principal of the school, I ask them, what would his life be like if this curriculum were gift-based? If we were able to see the gift in each of our children and taught them around their gifts? What would happen if our community was gift-based? If we really understood what the gift of each member of our community was and really began to support them in that? And so, of course, that's for him. But you sit and you sweep the garden and you bring your particular gifts. And it might be to make a garden or raise beautiful children, or fight for justice, or it might be to work in healing or medicine or build a conscious business or be an artist or a dancer. I don't know what your gift is. But when you get up from that quiet mind and open heart, what else really is your life for? What else really nourishes the heart but to be able to give, somehow to give your gift? I talked about it, maybe it was last month or sometime. I've been away on sabbatical, so not teaching here so recently. But my friend Malidoma Somé, the West African shaman and medicine man, he uses a West African metaphor. He said, everybody who's born into a human incarnation comes with a certain cargo. I like this image. And your task is to deliver your cargo. And your cargo is really your gift. And when you understand this, then it's not so much about being generous as just offering yourself to the world and receiving as well. Because I was spending time with Ram Dass recently in Hawaii, and he talked about this. He said, I went around the world teaching for a long time, and then we started the Seva Foundation, which just celebrated 20-some years of doing eye surgeries to restore sight to people who were blind in Nepal and India and Africa and various places. They just celebrated their 4 millionth eye surgery, 4 million people who are blind who can now see. He said, and that was just a wonderful thing to do with my life. But then I had this major stroke, and now I'm in a wheelchair and I can't move one arm, and I have trouble speaking, some aphasia. He said, and people have to pick me up and move me and wipe my bottom. He said, and I'll tell you, going around the world taking care of everybody and giving to all these people, that was easy compared to letting people take care of you. So there's also something about letting yourself being taken care of. And in that book of Mother Teresa's, she writes about a beggar who came up to her and said, Mother, I want to give you, and took these paisa, small coins out of the hem of his or her, shawl, and said, I want to give you this gift. And she said, I don't know whether I should take the gift or not. In my mind, she said, I thought, if I take this man's or this woman's money, that might be their food money for the next 2 days. Should I take it? And I stood there, and then I said, who am I to judge? It's so beautifully offered. She said, and I said, yes, thank you. And they said, give this to others who are hungry. She said, and when I saw the brightness in that person's eyes, that they too were able to offer something and give something, she said it was probably the best gift that I could ever receive, to allow this to happen, and the best gift that they could do. We've got all the politics now telling us to be terrified. I sure hope you're not believing that rubbish. I mean, the great political commentator of 100 years ago, H.L. Mencken, said the whole aim of politics is to scare and terrify the population, creating all kinds of imaginary hobgoblins that then get people to vote out of fear for those who are looking for power. And that's how it works, really. The likelihood that you will die in a terrorist attack in America, even if there will be another one, I mean, that's going to happen at some point, is probably about the same as being eaten by a shark, basically. It's true, just numerically and statistically. And it's 1/1000th of, or 1/10,000th or something like that, of the danger of just going out on the highways in Christmas season with all those other drivers. If you want to be terrified, don't drive on New Year's Eve, right? How are we going to respond to this? Are we going to let the terrorists set the agenda for our hearts? Are we going to let the terror inside? Or are we as individuals and are we as a society going to say, our response to this is not just going to be some military response, but we're going to take 10% of our military budget, let's say, 50 or $100 billion a year, and in the next 5 years, join with other countries and feed every hungry child on earth, and give clean water to every village on earth. Then we would be, what's the line from Langston Hughes? He writes, "Let America be America again, the America she never was." Then we would be something that exists in some way in the imagination of the world, or that used to and still does somewhere, that there's some greatness in the spirit of this country or the spirit of what it was born out of. And so instead of making others them and them and them, we become an island of generosity. We become the seed planters of the world. We become a force of connection and love. It's really the only force that meets the force of terror and violence, and that can match it, is the force of love. Nothing else is close.